Good morning. Happy Wednesday to you. My name is Evan Smith. I'm the pastor at Second Presbyterian Church here in downtown Stanton, and I'm coming to you today with your daily Lenten devotional. I'm picking up right where we left off yesterday in Matthew, reading the section again where Judas agrees to betray Jesus, and we're going into this part leading up to the Lord's Supper where Jesus predicts that one of his disciples will betray him. So let's hear this reading from Matthew 26. Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priest and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from that moment he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. On the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Where do you want us to make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says my time is near. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed and began to say to him one after another, "Surely not I, Lord." He answered, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to the one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." He replied, "You have said so." In this lesson, we see Jesus talking about how one of the disciples is going to betray him. And I've said before, I think in Matthew's version, he's wanting people to see that, yes, Judas was the chief betrayer, but in their own way, all of the disciples would eventually betray Jesus. I mean, what is it if not a betrayal? If when you are in your hour of greatest need, everyone flees, everyone says that they don't know who you are. I mean, all of these sorts of things. That's a betrayal too. But what's one of the big differences? In this meal that we'll talk about tomorrow, on Maundy, Thursday, when we remember the Lord's Supper, but in this meal they're about to have, Jesus is talking about forgiveness and the forgiveness that is available that we're to remember and commemorate through that meal. But according to John's gospel, after this moment where Jesus identifies Judas as his chief betrayer, Judas leaves. He's not there to be forgiven. I think we see in this that Judas's chief sin in many ways wasn't just betraying Jesus, it was his lack of willingness to change. Sometimes we like to admire that in people. We're like, well, at least they've been consistent. They may be consistently wrong, but at least they're consistent. Like, I'm from North Carolina, and I remember my dad was a solid Southern Democrat, and he would talk about how he was going to vote for Jesse Helms, the Republican senator who'd been there forever, and he hated Jesse Helms. And I remember asking him, and I'm in like middle school, "Dad, why are you going to vote for Jesse Helms?" And he said, "Well, I don't agree with anything that he says, but at least I know where he stands. The man doesn't change." And so it seems like a virtue, like Popeye, "I am what I am." And but that was the problem with Judas. He wasn't willing to change. He had this idea about who the Messiah would be. And when that wasn't who Jesus was, he was willing to just hand him over to betray him. Maybe, like I said, the chief sin is the lack of willingness to change, especially because the spiritual life is all about change. So if there have been any areas in your life where you feel like God maybe is calling you to move on, to grow, to let go, but you haven't been willing to change, because I worry that can lead us down paths that are the sin of Judas. Because the big sin of Judas was his lack of willingness to change, and the fact that when presented with the light of God, because of his unwillingness to change, he chose to be in darkness. And I don't think we ever consciously make that decision, but we make lots of little decisions along the way that lead us away from light and lead us towards darkness. So in this holy week, as we are preparing our spirits for what is to come this week, let us take some time to evaluate that. Is there any area of my life where I have not been willing to change? And I know that I should. And that is your word for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please click the like button, maybe even share it on your own page. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, and goodbye.